Hi guys. One of the things you have to realize when you're working with your child, the diagnosis is very important. At the same time, we still have to work with what's best for your child to help your child move better. So diagnosis might be medical conditions, stabilities, but right now we're going to look at dyskinetic cerebral palsy with dystonia. It is very easy to see an abrupt movement of a child and try and label it. I hear words, reflexes, startle reflex, flight or flight, and I really don't appreciate those terms on a child because you're not going to be able to service their needs as much as you think you can. Because now you're trying to fix a certain situation versus working with their whole body. First thing we have to look at is why someone is having abnormal movement. First thing I asked about was intubation. Why? Because what you're seeing is, quote, lack of head control. So let's look at the lack of head control. The lack of head control in his case has to do with the intubation. The intubation came in and did a shift, especially in the ethmoid cavity. When there's an ethmoid hip, like I've described before, so when I'm looking at you like this, right, I have binocular vision and convergence. What happens is you start to see in this, and so now I have doubled vision. So what's happening is the vision is still the best feature he has, and he's trying to see right eye, left eye. This is where, again, you might be going to the ophthalmologist, just like I ask you to do, because I'm looking to see what the structure is, just to make sure you're hearing the eyes are fine. Now, in a very immature evaluation with the eyes are fine, they're just looking at making sure the retina is okay, the optic nerves are okay. So you hear the eyes are fine. That doesn't mean the child can see. So now there's structure of the eyes that they can see. We're looking at acuity. I have to make sure they're checked for. So again, if you're saying, oh, the child's 2200, well, that's legally blind, but that still hasn't physically checked the eye for acuity. You're using cards to give a reference. Looking at acuity, I'm looking at the shape of the eye, the sphere, and the axis of the eye. You could have acuity fine, shape of the eye is fine, the cylinder, but the axis can be off. And that's where you get the exotropia or something like that, or esotropia. We have a visual problem. I had a child that was legally blind. Right? I had to include vision into everything my son does. I still have to include vision. But guess what? If I was working on Felipe, getting him back to the Diamondbacks, I would also, everything that I'm telling you is the same information. Whether I'm working with someone like Felipe, trying to get him back to pro sport as an example, or whether we're working with a child where you're being told you have dyskinetic cerebral palsy with dystonia, meaning they're saying that there's abnormal muscle movement. No, this is the best I've got to get my eyes to where they need to be. So on top of that, when you're adding in a medication to lessen these movements, you're actually telling that child, I'm lessening the availability you have to see. And so the next thing I need to look at also with him is, does he have issues with the vocal cords or something like that, or laryngomalacia that I bring up? Because again, if I'm trying to position my throat for a breath or swallow, you and I don't think about our breathing and swallowing. He does, especially if he's trying to go here. And he's got to, now I've got to toss my head here to swallow. That is a lot of work, guys. And now we want where he can sit on his pelvis. No, with those two fields of operation of vision and swallowing, the brain is available to work on the pelvis. And I don't mean that neurologically impaired, I mean just pure structure. You can't swallow or breathe. You know what I mean? You can give someone all the baclofen, clonidine, like I've seen it all. I'm not saying stop all your medications, guys. That's not what movement lesson is. Doctor, I don't defend that. But to not observe the way the child is movement is a language. That's our first language. And so looking at the way he moves. So please, the girdles, the supports, I know what you're looking for are visual cues. Is my child available to sit up? Can my child grasp an item? Can my child give an item back? We're looking for external, right, proof of movements. But the first movements that have to happen are what I call as your transitional movements. And the movements, the ability to shift my weight to pick up the object, to come over here and breathe and swallow and not have to And you should not hear these kind of functions on your child. So when your child's been intubated, especially for a month like that, really, as far as the cranial movements, is bringing that apnoid back into place, allowing that. Now we have to work on articulating that vomer, the nasal septum, and then going into then the zygomatics and the maxillaries. I get it, that's a lot of anatomy, but again, some movements are more advanced than others. But if you really want to go after helping your child, this is where it has to happen first. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at external contraptions to give you that visual fulfillment of sitting. I hope that helps. Thanks.